Led by a suffocating defense, the Seahawks are back in a tie for first place in the NFC West after dispatching the Cardinals. How did they get it done? We'll be breaking it all down here on our latest post-game edition of Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Glad to be joined here on our weekly post-game show by my co-host, Connor Benintendi, and a special thanks to all the 12s who are listening in, whether you're in nearby Sammamish, Washington, or down in Austin, Texas. We greatly appreciate each and every one of you for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. The Seahawks entered today with an opportunity to get back into first place in the NFC West. And sure enough, right now, as things stand as we're speaking, the Philadelphia Eagles are working on beating the Los Angeles Rams. If that holds by tiebreaker, the Seattle Seahawks officially will be in first place in the NFC West via tiebreaker, thanks to a 16-6 win over the Arizona Cardinals. And it's funny, we were talking about this in the press box after the game, Connor, but it seems like every time these two teams get together at Lumen Field recently, nobody can get above 19 points. And I don't think anybody has gotten more than 19 points in a game in this rivalry. The last 3 matchups now at Lumen Field, whether it's the weather or just the fact that the defense were playing out of their mind, this was certainly a defensive slugfest. But at the end of the day, the Seahawks were the ones that kept the opponent out of the end zone. Just 2 field goals for the Cardinals in a suffocating performance by Mike Macdonald's unit.
It really is a testament to how far this defense has come, Corbin. I mean, you look at just what the Cardinals were doing over their 4-game win streak coming into this game, averaging 26.3 points over those 4 games. They get held to a season low 6 points in this, and then this is the best game, at least points wise, that Seattle has had since week 3 versus the Dolphins, and only time they've held another team out of the end zone since that game, Corbin. And that was obviously back when this team was still sort of fool's gold, whether we didn't know whether this team was actually good, whether they were going to be contenders, even though they were 3-0 just because of the opponents they played. Corbin, this was a legit opponent that they played today and that they shut down. The defense was just incredible. The offense was a little bit inconsistent, but they showed up when it mattered. Obviously, you see the numbers right there on the screen. Second straight game that the defense has held their opponent to under 300 yards, both San Francisco last week and Arizona this week. Just really stout, and it seems like this defense, Corbin, is starting to become what Mike Macdonald expected it to be, especially just with the team pass rush, all rushing together. You have Leonard Williams. We're going to get to Leonard Williams, Corbin, but Leonard Williams just by far, I think, his best game as a Seahawk, and he said so after the game. Kobe Bryant coming out of nowhere, continuing his run, especially in a starting role, looking incredible. Devin Witherspoon obviously spurring that play that allowed Kobe Bryant to get the pick 6. Just some serious standout performances by the defense today, Corbin, and I think it was a real great team effort for the Seahawks today.
It was a great team effort, but as you mentioned, Leonard Williams was really the one that stood out. But I thought it was interesting listening to him in the post-game press conference talking about there was just kind of this mentality going into today's game, the way that he woke up that told him the Seahawks defense was going to play well. He was going to play well. Take a listen to this quick clip from the post-game press conference.
Yeah, I think that definitely was my most dominant game since being a part of the Seahawks. And, it was interesting because I woke up this morning just with a great feeling. And pretty much everyone I approached before the game, I was just like, I got a good feeling about this game. And it wasn't directed towards my personal success. It was directed towards, the team success. I just had a great feeling about it. But I just had great energy at that time.
Just had a great feeling about it. And look, it ended up being right. Maybe we can call him a prophet, but considering how things went this week with the power outages and all the adversity that could have been thrown Seattle's way this week, preparing for one of the best offenses, at least as of late, the Cardinals had been red hot on offense, 3 straight games with 28 or more points. They did not let any of those issues become distractions or impact the game planning. And look, there's a lot of different avenues we can go here, but I will say this time and time again. The great defenses in the NFL, they find a way to consistently stop the run. And we know how much of an issue that was for the Seahawks earlier this year. And that renaissance since Ernest Jones came in, since Tyrese Knight became the starter a few weeks ago, some of the moves that have been made personnel-wise, that continued today. And James Conner, prior to today, we talked all this week about his ability to break tackles and create yardage after contact. And I think he's a fantastic running back, but he literally could not get anything going today. His career low with the Cardinals since joining their team in 2021 was 17 rushing yards in the game. He had 8 today. I repeat, 8 rushing yards in this game. He barely averaged over a yard per carry in this football game. The Seahawks just shut him down. He was not able to get anything going. Kyler Murray only had 2 carries for 9 yards. And one of the times that he was thinking about trying to take off on 4th down, a certain corner by the name of Devin Witherspoon cut him off in pursuit, and next thing you know, he lofts the ball over the top of Michael Wilson's head. Kobe Bryant picks it off and returns it 69 yards for a touchdown. I just felt like the run defense is really what set everything in motion here, because Arizona had a top 5 rushing attack coming into this game, and they were rendered basically completely ineffective in this game. The best run they had a run by Demercado that was for, I believe, 14 yards. But otherwise, they didn't have another run that went for more than 7 in this entire game. Seattle just shut him down. They made him one-dimensional, and Kyler Murray just couldn't get the job done with all the weight being put on his shoulders and the way that the pass rush was getting after him up front.
Yeah, you mentioned it, Corbin. Not only did Connor have a horrible day, but him and Trey Benson combined only picked up 26 yards on 11 carries. The only thing that actually bolstered the running back performances was that run by Amari DiMercado, like you mentioned, the 14-yard run that they had. And it just, again, like we talked about before this, Corbin, this run defense has been evolving ever since Ernest Jones showed up and put on a Seahawks uniform. And today, only allowing 49 rushing yards, that's the season best for the Seahawks this year. It just keeps getting better and better. It doesn't really matter who they're facing. Whoever lines up in front of them, they're shutting them down. And it's such a different narrative than what we had in even the beginning and middle of the season when they were winning some games here and there. It always was that the run defense was not doing enough. And that was one of the big holes in this defense. Now we're talking about it as a strength of this defense, and it's complementing Corbin, the back end coverage, and putting pressure on the offenses to Kyler Murray had to do almost everything with his arm today. And when that's forced, Kyler Murray is a great player. He's a great player both with his legs, with his arm. But when they force Arizona to get away from their identity, become a one-dimensional team, and have to throw the football every time, you get plays like what Devin Witherspoon crashing down on that 4th down and forcing a terrible throw that goes right into the arms of Kobe Bryant. That's right. That's just football 101. And that's what was wrong with the Seahawks for much of this season. And not that it's been completely ironed out, but their offense being one-dimensional has made it hard to win games at times, Corbin. And I think that they flipped that completely on its head and threw it right back at Arizona today.
Yeah, every time that the Cardinals seemed like they had momentum going, I mean, Trey McBride had a great game, over 120 receiving yards from the tight end. But every time it seemed like Arizona was going to get something going, Seattle, the bend but not break moniker that Arizona had lived by, Seattle was the team that did that. I mean, there were a couple times Arizona got down inside the 10-yard line and they could not cash in, and they were stuck with field goals. And so this defense, not being able to run the ball certainly hurt them there, but they weren't able to complete passes once they got down there inside the 10. And you mentioned the secondary. This is the other stat that jumps out to me. Away from Trey McBride, it almost felt like the Cardinals or the Seahawks were saying, look, we're going to let McBride's going to make some of his plays. We're going to obviously not just completely let him just do whatever he wants, but he's going to be the guy that maybe makes some plays for him. But we're going to try to take away Marvin Harrison. Harrison, for the most part, had a quiet game. Michael Wilson, aside from one spectacular catch, he was pretty darn quiet in this game. They gave up 110 total yards receiving to receivers for the Cardinals. When you do that, you have a pick 6 and you hold the opponent under 50 rushing yards. Yeah, you're going to have a lot of success when you check off all those boxes. They got to Kyler Murray frequently. Leonard Williams leading that charge. They had 5 sacks on Murray in this game. It felt like everything they needed to do to shut down this Cardinals offense, they were able to get it done. And so this is a huge win for the team, because Arizona's been as good as anybody the last month this season. This offense has been fantastic. And That did not look to be the case today. The Seahawks finally playing to their home field advantage and really had a splendid performance, maybe the best performance on defense that we have seen from them this year, keeping the Cardinals out of the end zone. And if things hold up, right now the Rams are losing by 16 to the Eagles. If that score holds, the Seahawks will be in first place in the NFC West. When we come back here on our post-game edition of Locked On Seahawks, we've got our weekly game balls, offense, defense, special teams. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Locked On Seahawks is sponsored by BetterHelp. What's the first thing you do if you had an extra hour in your day? For me, in the heat of the regular season, I wish I had a little bit more time to lift weights and work out. The best way to squeeze that special thing into your schedule is to know what's important to you and make it a priority. Therapy can help you find what matters to you so you can do more of it. And BetterHelp Online Therapy will assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional therapist in less than 48 hours. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try today. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Get 10% off your first month at BetterHelp.com/lockedon. That's 10% off your first month of online therapy at BetterHelp.com/lockedon. Welcome back to the post-game edition of Locked On Seahawks. This is your host, Corbin Smith. Glad to be joined here on our show by my co-host, Connor Benintendi. And a special thanks to all the 12s who are listening. And thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. The Seahawks are back over 500 at 6-5 following a 16-6 victory. Certainly a defensive slugfest, not a lot of points in the rainy, cold Lumen Field. But Seattle was able to get it done. They get some points on defense. They actually scored a couple touchdowns. Arizona kept out of the end zone. And now the Seahawks are in first place in the NFC West. If the Rams lose, as it looks like is going to happen right now, the Seahawks will have sole possession, or not sole possession, they'll be tied, but they will have the tiebreaker with the Arizona Cardinals, and they will be in first place in the NFC West. Let's get to our game balls from this victory, Connor. And you're going to surprise some people with your pick on offense, but this is actually a player that I considered when you think about the poor blocking that he had in front of him for most of the afternoon, the contributions that he made in the passing game. Ken Walker III, somebody that certainly outplayed the support that he had around him in this game.
Absolutely, Corbin. Yeah, it's hard to not just sit here and keep talking about the defense, but in terms of outside of your pick for game ball, Corbin, I think that K9 really had the best performance. It was kind of between him and Geno, but Geno's interception, I couldn't overcome that in terms of picking him for a game ball. So K9, obviously, you've got the total yards there on the screen, 93 total yards on 20 touches. The rushing yards alone, Corbin, not great. 16 carries for 41 yards, but again, like you just highlighted there, really did not have much help in front of him. A lot of negative plays where he's just running for his life, as K9 typically does, simply because he does not have much push in front of him. But he made the most of what he did, and he had that slick hurdle, Corbin. That was one of the cleaner hurdles I've seen in a long time. I mean, we can look at, obviously, Saquon Barkley's earlier this season, the backwards hurdle. He can't outdo that, but still, just a great play. And I thought that K9 did the most with what he had available to him today.
Yeah, I thought he played really well considering circumstances. More than 50 yards receiving. He had a 20-yard reception. So he was a big part of the passing game, but not quite as big as I just looked back. This is actually the third straight game that Jackson Smith-Njigba has gotten a game ball from either you or I. And it's fitting because not quite as gaudy numbers today. Didn't get over 100 yards, so that snaps that streak. But still, 6 catches, 77 yards. And he scored the only offensive touchdown that Seahawks had in this game. He had a 46-yard gain on a tunnel screen. And maybe that's the thing I'm most excited about here, Connor. I mean, it's so weird because if you go back to like 2012, the Seahawks were dominant running the ball, but they could not run a screen to save their lives. In 2024, it's the exact opposite. This team struggles to run the football, but they're actually pretty darn good at running screens. And we've seen Jackson Smith-Njigba get loose on several of them. And that tunnel screen, it was the perfect time to call it. The Cardinals were bringing 6. They had the blitz coming and cover 0 behind. Linemen get downfield. It was the perfect play call against what the Cardinals were doing. So Smith-Njigba gets that big play. And then a couple plays later, after it looked like the Seahawks might get held out of the end zone again because they can't run the ball in short yardage situations, they get the 3-yard touchdown on the quick out to Jack Smith-Njigba. He just continues to have an outstanding sophomore season, even if his numbers today weren't quite as big as they had been the last 2 weeks. 6 for 77 with a touchdown is still a pretty darn good game. And so I thought he was the one real bright spot on offense on the day where both teams just really struggled to move the football. I mean, both teams moved the ball. They could not find a way, though, to sustain their drives and put points on the board. Let's go to the defensive side of the ball. And this is actually really interesting because I think in most cases, there would clearly be one player that is deserving the game ball based on production. And yet this one feels like there are two players that absolutely deserve to bring home the game ball. In fact, the guy that I know you're going to talk about, he's got a ball that he's going to be bringing to his mother, who it was her birthday today. And he gave her a pretty nice birthday gift here at Lumen Field.
I do love it. And I loved all of Kobe Bryant's presser today, Corbin, just talking about that he was talking to his family and obviously paying homage to Marshawn Lynch at the end of his 69-yard interception return for a touchdown. And he said he told his family that he was going to do that if he managed to get a touchdown. And that's exactly what he did, Corbin. I love it because I honestly almost feel like we're leaving a guy off this list too, a guy that I highlighted in my story after the game, Corbin. Just obviously Devin Witherspoon also had an exceptional game and set up this pick six. But Kobe Bryant, just it's so cool to see a guy who has really kind of struggled to crack and maintain a role in this defense. And now Rayshawn Jenkins comes back off IR, and Kobe Bryant, they were in a lot of 3 safety sets today, but still Kobe Bryant got the start. 6 tackles, first interception return for a touchdown, a pass deflection. And he just read it perfectly. He was in perfect position, Corbin. You can't dial it up any better than that. Thanks to Devin Witherspoon. He gave thanks to Devin Witherspoon, rightfully so. But at the end of the day, Kobe Bryant made the play.
Yeah, and he had a couple really nice open field tackles. He just continues to play well. But look, I know the defensive touchdown, you got to give a game ball to somebody who does that. But I don't know that I have seen a Seahawks defensive lineman have as dominant of a game as we saw Leonard Williams have today. This might seem like exaggeration for some people because there's been some really good defensive linemen in the Legion of Boom era, but like this might have been the most dominant defensive tackle effort I've seen since Cortez Kennedy was roaming Seattle's defensive line. Leonard Williams was unblockable in this game. And you look at the numbers, they speak for themselves. 6 tackles, 2.5 sacks, 4 quarterback hits. Oh, by the way, he had 3 tackles for loss. He blew up James Conner 4 yards in the backfield in the third quarter. And he described it after the game being, hey, I read the pullers and I knew where the ball was going. So he was able to just penetrate the gap and just blow up Conner before that run had any chance to get going. But it just felt like number 99 was living in the backfield. And you almost were wondering if he was off sides every play with how quickly he was getting back there. They had no answer for him. And maybe what excites me the most, just a couple plays after that 4-yard tackle for loss, which came from his 3-tech defensive tackle position, they slid him out wide in a 2-point stance at 300-plus pounds. And he wins with a speed rush against the tackle and sacks Kyler Murray on that play. There are very few human beings. This is how Mike McDonald described it. There are very few human beings on this planet that can do that. Leonard Williams is one of them, and he is showing he is worth every single penny that the Seahawks paid him. And what a game. What a dominant performance. The guards for the Cardinals, they could not block him. To me, he was the most dominant player in the field today.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think you said it best, Corbin. I have not seen one single defensive lineman that consistently splitting double teams, that consistently just bull rushing offensive linemen, putting them flat on their back, getting in the backfield. Think about how many – I can't wait to see what the pressure numbers come out to, Corbin, because there was so many plays. Obviously, you have the stats there, but there were so many plays where Leonard Williams was getting by an offensive lineman or laying him on his back, and then the play just went somewhere else. But he was in the backfield almost immediately, and just nothing goes in the box score, right? But any sort of pressure numbers and just his overall impact was massive today. I think single-handedly he was the most impactful player on either side of the ball for the Seahawks today. Special teams-wise, Corbin, flip it over to that side. I know that sometimes we struggle a little bit on who to settle on. We got punters, kickers, whether it's special teams tacklers, whatever it might be. Jason Myers today, I know he missed an extra point. It could have been a big one down the stretch. But the only reason I picked him for this one, Corbin, is if he doesn't make that 50-yard field goal there at the end of the game, the Cardinals are getting the ball back with almost 2 minutes on the clock at their own 32-yard line. That's plenty of time to go down the field, try to tie the game, and send it to overtime. So props to Jason Myers on that. It's I believe it was his 6th make of 50-plus yards this season. If he misses that, it could have been a much different situation there at the end of the game, Corbin.
I'm going to go with the other part of the kicking battery for the Seahawks. Michael Dixon, man, he was getting quite a mid-November workout in the first half with all the punting that the Seahawks were doing, but he was consistently pinning the ball deep into Cardinals territory. He had one that was down to the 3-yard line, and if not for an unnecessary roughness penalty, I believe that was the one that was called on Pharaoh Brown. If not for that penalty, it would have been down to the 3-yard line. He was consistently coffin cornering the football on the Cardinals, and 43.6 yards per punt average is not the best he's ever had in his career, but 3 punts that went inside the 20. I believe all 3 of those actually landed inside the 15-yard line. So he was punting extremely well early, and that kept the Cardinals, for the most part, from having good field position to be able to cash in. The one time they did have good field position, the Seahawks were deep in their own territory. Dixon was punting from his own end zone. Cardinals got the ball around midfield. They went down and got a field goal. But otherwise, he did a great job in controlling where the Cardinals were getting the football and their ability to be able to sustain drives with a long field that they had to navigate. So both of those guys, I felt like, had good games. There were a couple other guys. I thought D. Williams had a really good punt return. There were a number of guys that we could consider for this. I thought the special teams was definitely a big difference maker for the Seahawks in this game. All right, let's shift gears as we do each and every post-game show. We've got our weekly 3 up, 3 down stock watch, and anytime you have a big win, it's going to be easier to look for positives. Certainly a number of players to talk about. I want to go on offense. Look, they scored 16 points today, and 7 of those came on defense. It's not like this offense was lighting it up. Both defenses were playing really good football. But I felt like one guy that continues to stand out that had a really solid game, A.J. Barner. We got to see him with 3 catches. Didn't have great stats by any means, but a couple times after the catchability, he was able to get first downs. I thought he had a couple nice blocks in the run game on a few plays that Ken Walker III was able to actually find some room to operate. No Noah Fant for the 3rd straight game, and it feels like the Seahawks have been able to get by without him because A.J. Barner has continued to provide more contributions in the passing game than I think any of us thought he was going to when he really wasn't part of Michigan's arsenal catching passes last year. That was not considered a strength in his game. He has been a pleasant surprise in that regard.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah. In that space, especially with A.J. Barner, like you said, Corbin, I did not really expect him to be much of a factor this year at all, outside of, maybe being an extra blocker here and there. And he does continue to show up in the box score. And I think that, at times he's had, I think, 2 weeks ago, maybe he had the longest play on offense of the entire day. It was like a 20-yard catch or something. But anyways, the point is he does just keep popping up, and he has been good blocking. And obviously his longest catch today was an 11-yard. He had 4 targets. I mean, that's the 4th most on the team today, Corbin, in a day where Geno Smith spread the ball around pretty well. So it is shocking to see him continue to pop up as much as he is, but I think he's actually going to be a pretty darn good player moving forward for this team. Also, you got up there already, Corbin. Tyrese Knight just continues to play well as he steps into this starting role next to Ernest Jones. Again, Ernest Jones and Tyrese Knight, I think it's 3 straight weeks, Corbin, that those two have been at the top of the box score in terms of total tackles. Tyrese Knight finishes with 9 total tackles, 1 tackle for loss, and he gets his first career sack. There's just not enough you can say about this kid continuing to just take the bull by the horns and continue to play better and better every single week. And Mike McDonald's talked about him, Corbin. He's talked about him. He almost gleams every single time that he's talking about Tyrese Knight and his linebacker core now. So just excited for him, especially to get that 1 sack too, because now he doesn't have to be looking forward to that every single week, whether or not he's going to bring a quarterback to the ground.
And look, I was going to try to not go down this well, but look, the Seahawks should have had 2 defensive touchdowns in this game. I am still convinced. I understand some people arguing on Kyler Murray. There was a a fumble that was reviewed and they turned it into an incomplete pass. I did not see any evidence on that play that his arm was definitively moving forward. I can't believe they overturned it as quick as they did. But on that play, Tyrese Knight was the one that scooped up the fumble and returned it for a touchdown. He could have had a defensive touchdown to go with a sack and double-digit tackles. I mean, he has been an energizer bunny in the middle next to Ernest Jones. I just feel like his energy, he is not like Devin Witherspoon in the sense he's not super vocal. This isn't a guy that you're going to, like Kobe Bryant was saying, I could hear him all the way down the field when he's returning his pick six, because that's just Devin Witherspoon. He loves to talk. You're not going to get that type of mentality out of Tyrese Knight. He's more of a quiet enforcer type, but he plays with such great energy. He can blitz. We're seeing him drop back, and he's comfortable in coverage. I've just been incredibly impressed from what I've seen there. Speaking of coverage, we got to give Julian Love some props, because it feels like now this segment is turning into the plays that didn't necessarily count, because we talk about that defensive touchdown that was overturned. Julian Love, this was hilarious in the press box. This was a third down. Kyler Murray had rolled out to his right. He was trying to extend the play, and he's throwing the ball downfield. I believe it was Marvin Harrison Jr. He looked like he was open along the sideline. And then Julian Love, it's like he was on the treadmill and just turned the speed up 4 miles per hour at the last second. And the closing speed that he had, he gets in front of the receiver, dives, and picks off the pass. He couldn't get his 2 feet down in bounds. All his momentum was carrying him out, but it was still a phenomenal play. And he had another pass breakup as well. So 2 pass breakups in the secondary for Julian Love. I thought he played a fantastic game for the Seahawks. And this secondary, you can't say enough about the way the secondary in general is playing right now, limiting big plays. But it feels like Julian Love is a huge part of that, with the range that he has, the football IQ, and the ability to get his hands on the football.
Yeah, and on the replay on the TV broadcast, Corbin, he nearly had that shin in bounds. And if he gets that shin down, we might be talking about a completely different play. So it was really just an athletic play by Julian Love. I feel like whenever I think about Julian Love, I just don't think about him as, the craziest athlete on the field. That probably obviously goes to Devin Witherspoon or Reek Woolen, given their speed and just crazy athleticism. But when you see Julian Love make a play like that, it's like, oh, this guy isn't just like a tackling vocal leader machine. Like, he actually does have some serious hops, some serious speed in there. And it's a reminder that this guy still has so many good years of football ahead of him. And if he keeps trying to make plays like that, he's going to be a leader on this defense for a long time.
Going to our 3 down, I feel like this has become chronic, but I'm gonna keep going down this well. The Seahawks are not getting good enough play at guard. Now, Anthony Bradford, best wishes to him. I'm hoping that he's able to get back fairly quickly, but injured his ankle, had to be helped off the field today. Christian Haynes replaced him. I was hoping Christian Haynes was going to seize this opportunity that he had to play the most snaps he was going to have. And maybe when I go back and watch the All-22, I'll have a little more positive viewpoint. But he was getting pushed around, both in the run game and the pass game. He was getting pushed around by the Arizona Cardinals. They were getting a lot of push on him in the passing game with power. So it goes back to what Ryan Grubb said. We need to see him better with strength at the point of attack. You could see that in today's game. And in the run game, I didn't see him moving guys either. So this was not an opportunity that was fully taken advantage of, in my opinion, from him. And I thought Laken Tomlinson had a rough game. There were several missed blocks in the run game. He got bullied on one of the sacks on Geno Smith. By the way, guess who had that sack? LJ Collier, of all people. And so Laken Tomlinson got bull rushed into Smith's lap by LJ Collier. You're just not getting good enough play from the guard spot, and that continues to hurt your run game, and it's hurting your pass protection and your pass blocking assignments when you have issues at both those positions right now.
Yeah, and this is just always tough, Corbin. Whenever we have, such a great win by Seattle today, it's always difficult to pick out these players that we're putting on down because, especially a lot of these guys, like, it's not like they had terrible games. I mean, Pharaoh Brown's on here mostly because he had 2 pretty poor, just bad penalties, right? And I mean, he just hasn't had the impact really this season that I think a lot of us hoped he would. And Christian Haynes, I mean, obviously Seattle gave up 5 sacks. You're never going to come out of a game where your quarterback gets sacked 5 times feeling real good about the offensive line. And you highlighted both the guards, obviously. Laken Tomlinson, not great. Christian Haynes, not great. And you just hope you'd see a little bit more from a third-round rookie. I know he's a rookie, but still third round. I think a lot of people thought he was going to be a little bit adapt to the NFL a little bit quicker than he has, Corbin. He doesn't quite have that strength, as you mentioned. But, yeah, it's a problem still. It's a problem still that Seattle has to address, and it's part of the reason that they still can't find that balance on offense. And I think Pharaoh Brown, again, as I just said, penalties, and then really Derek Hall, all I'll say on that is it's just on a day where so many guys were flying around, Corbin, and highlighting, Derek Hall has been one of the best pass rushers. He's been arguably the best pass rusher for Seattle this season, and you just didn't feel him as much in this game as you did some of his teammates.
Yeah, I was just – listen, when you're looking at 3 down and you're talking about the defensive side of the ball in this game, you didn't give up a touchdown. I mean, good luck finding somebody that really struggled, but – I can't remember 58 making any plays today. He had just 1 tackle on the stat sheet, but I can't remember any pressures. Boy, Mafe was disruptive. Draymond Jones had a couple nice rushes. They were getting good play from the interior. It just didn't seem like Derek Hall was really a big part of that success today. I don't remember seeing any plays that jump out. And so this is more just a numbers game on defense where who didn't necessarily dominate today, because this was a defense that played really, really well from front to back. And so it was a quiet game for him. That doesn't mean he can't come back this next week against the Jets and get after Aaron Rodgers or Tyrod Taylor. We don't know who's going to be starting for the Jets at this point, but whoever is under center for the Jets, it's an opportunity for Derek Hall to be able to bounce back a little bit. And not that he necessarily played poorly today. It's just he was really quiet. He was a non-factor statistically, and I don't remember him doing anything as far as pressures go on a defense where everybody else seemed they were getting after Kyler Murray. It was a pretty quiet day for number 58. As always, you can follow me on X and Blue Sky at Corbin Smith NFL. You can follow Connor at CJohn Benintendi. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Seahawks on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast to make sure you don't miss a single episode. When we come back tomorrow, I'll be teaming up with Rob Rang. The two of us will have our Monday musings coming out of this huge win over the Arizona Cardinals. And, oh, by the way, the Seahawks are in first place in the NFC West because the Rams fall to the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday Night Football. So we'll be talking NFC West standings and the NFC playoff standings as well. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Thanks for listening in. Go Hawks.